we're live with the yet unnamed podcast going through this one more time. It's your boy, Al Rogers, and
Faerhad Targaryen.
And so last episode we covered Baby Driver, fantastic film starring Jamie Foxx and a dude named Baby. Overall, great movie, but today we're doing something a little different. Today we've got not a movie, but a series. Farhan?
When They See Us, a Netflix special. This was something that caught my eye. I mean, I heard people talking about it, and I had no idea what it was about, honestly, but it popped up on Netflix. I was hearing about it, and I checked it out, and I went through the entire thing. So, this
in one
is...
sitting? You went through the whole thing in one sitting?
So I watched it twice. The first time I watched it, I watched the first 2 episodes. So here's the thing. It's not really a movie or a TV show. Netflix refers to this as a miniseries, so it's 4 episodes. The first time I watched it, I watched the first 2 episodes back to back, and then the next night I watched the next 2 episodes. That was the first time I watched it. And then I decided to show it to my mom, and when I told my mom, like, hey, let's watch this, and she's like, okay, let's just watch the first episode. She was so angry after watching the first episode. She's like, oh my god, we have to watch the next one. And then at the end of the next one, she was like, oh my god, we have to. And at the second time, yeah, she watched it for the entire sitting, and I watched it the entire sitting with her the second time. So the second time, yes, I did see it in an entire sitting.
So before I jump in and to start asking you a bunch of questions, one, I really want to know what caught your attention, what grabbed you. Let's go ahead and jump into a quick plot overview. That way our audience knows generally what happened, and then we'll start going into what captured your attention.
So When They See Us is based on a true story about the 1989 Central Park jogger case. This happened back. The name of the victim, I believe, I gotta look up. Trisha Ellen Miley. She was jogging one night in Central Park. She was attacked and brutally raped. And at the same time, it was spring break for a bunch of teenagers in Harlem. They just went into Central Park. While this was happening, someone called the police. A whole bunch of things. My understanding was that a lot of crimes were committed in the park that night. The worst one of all that happened was the attack, the rape. And so
But this is New York City, right?
Yeah.
This is New York City.
Central Park.
What year was this?
1989.
1989. But crime's happening all over. What's special about this one case?
What's special about this one case is that there are a lot of, I guess, sensitive topics to go over in the actual investigation, trial, and everything wrapped up in the Central Park jogger case overall. All of the quote-unquote suspects that were arrested were black and brown teenagers. None of them knew each other. They just happened to be in the park that night, and the cops rounded them up and interrogated the shit out of them for hours and hours. I think days. I think if I understand the portrayal correctly, they were held in the precinct, each of them, for over 24 hours. None of them knew what was going on with a rape that happened. And they didn't know each other either, you know, like they were like, oh, I didn't see no lady. We should go through, I guess, the names of the quote unquote central.
So before we jump into that, I do just want to say, as always, we tend to spoil either the movie or the series, so it's a given. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers.
And then,
even though this is based on a true story.
Spoiler alert. And then, so this, I think you mentioned this actually happened. This isn't fiction. This isn't a miniseries that was developed to anger people. This is what happened.
This is real. This was real. This all did actually happen. Innocent kids who had their lives wasted because of the police, you know, because of probably racism and the police. So a lot of young and upcoming actors were involved in this project. Asante Black plays young Kevin Richardson. Khalil Harris plays young Antron McCrae. Ethan Harris plays young Yusuf Salam. And Marcus Rodriguez plays young Raymond Santana. And Gerald Jerome, who I recognize from Moonlight, plays young and getting older Corey Wise. So they were the Central Park Five, later known as the Exonerated Five. All did a phenomenal job, I think, in acting. Especially, I want to say Gerald Jerome, who plays Corey Wise. He had his own episode reserved entirely for himself, which is episode 4. We can get into that in just a second. So I remember when I was first telling you about this and how this is a 4-part thing, you were a little bit hesitant, but once you started watching it, you probably got to see why I recommended this as today's episode.
So, unlike you, I think we had very different experiences watching this. So after I finished episode 1, I was not hooked. I very much wanted to get away from the series and stop watching completely. For me, the subject matter hit a little too close to home,
Yeah.
and I was very hesitant to continue to pursue it. It the film really pissed me off
Yeah.
in many ways. It's as you said. It's watching these young men be falsely accused of wrongdoing. It's not something that's easy to watch, and the repercussions of these false accusations leads to a wasted life.
Yeah, it can never be undone. I mean, eventually they get exonerated, right? And they get paid for every year they spent in jail, but no amount of money is going to bring back their youths and their innocence, right? That's like, you can't undo that. Their lives were wasted because of nonsense, essentially, because of racism and police brutality and nonsense. Another thing, though, and we might have this in common, I had no idea about the Central Park jogger case or any of this being real. I had no idea about any of this real life stuff until I started watching this miniseries. Is that the case for you as well, or did you know about the Central Park jogger case?
No, because the case is before my time. Although the film portrayed it as a very hotly debated trial, and it was watched by many people across the country.
Yeah.
It had the nation's attention.
Oh yeah.
But
it got the president's attention too.
Being born after the case, and not doing any research regarding New York City, it's just something that's never come up.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the plot and talk about how the 5 lives are portrayed in the miniseries. So we introduce the 5 main characters. How is it that these young men are joined?
So
are they friends? Are
two of them were. So the kids were Kevin Richardson, Antron McCrae, Yusuf Salam, Corey Wise, and Raymond Santana. Now, after the night of the, I guess, the rape, the murder. I mean, not the murder. Sorry, the rape. After the night of the attack, the police are tasked with going after kids on a list. So Felicity Huffman plays Linda Fairstein. Fun fact about Felicity Huffman, there was this college scandal about, I guess, actresses that were scamming colleges or something like that. Felicity Huffman was involved in it, and she plays Linda Fairstein in When They See Us, and she tasked the NYPD of going after all teenagers, black and brown teenagers in Harlem that were part of this quote-unquote list. I didn't really understand what that meant, but Corey Wise was not part of that list. I remember when the police were looking for Yusuf Salam, and Corey was with him, and one cop said to the other, "Oh, this kid's name's not on the list." But then the other cop is like, hey, you want to come down to the station anyway to, hang out with your friend or support your friend? And Corey Wise joins in just to be a good friend. But those were the only two that knew each other among the five that were eventually confessed and were arrested, went on trial and all. So, um, other than that, yeah, they were pretty much strangers. I think the one thing they may have had in common was that they were all on spring break. Like that may have been why they were all in Central Park that night, because it was spring break. At least I think that's the way When They See Us portrayed it. Is that it was that Friday night that spring break just started, and they all just went to the park to I guess have some fun. The TV show, I mean, not the TV show. This series in general plays in part the term called wilding or wilding out, and
Yeah.
the creator of the show, Ava DuVernay, she mentioned in an interview with the Breakfast Club that when she was watching the news about the Central Park jogger case in 1989, she heard someone on the news use that term wilding, and that's part of the reason why she incorporated it into the script of the show itself. So, um, that this whole uh, thing, this race, and I guess how uh, race has affected America is definitely incorporated into this story, because we saw in the series itself how people were protesting and seeing how this was basically a racist attack, and that these kids had nothing to do with what was going on with the crime that was committed. Eventually the truth comes out, but
Okay. So let me stop you right there. You say it that this was a racist attack. Now, do you say that from the perspective that these, in of course, the young men were later found not to be guilty of these crimes, but that they would, or they were portrayed to have attacked this lady because she is white,
oh
or
no.
that the police uh, were targeting them because they
Yes.
were black?
Yeah, yeah, it was the opposite. Not that a bunch of people were attacking a white lady, but rather um, institutional racism attacking innocent colored people. That's what I meant.
Okay, okay. An argument could be made for both, but um, okay,
That's how the show tried to portray it. I remember there was a scene in one of the episodes where the police were trying to write some sort of report, and one of the police were trying to write a line. The enemies were bad. The enemies were, I can't think of something else to say. You have a suggestion? And the cop in the back goes, the enemies were white. So I guess the police were trying to frame this as, colored people making an attack on white people. That's the way they were trying to frame it. You remember the scene that I'm referring to? It was really short. I don't remember which episode it was.
yeah. It might have been episode one when they were in the police station.
Yeah.
But okay, so you said that after the first episode, you you were gripped by the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. What got your attention?
I didn't realize, like, I didn't know what I was getting into when I started watching the show. And when I did, it was impossible to just not think about it. That's why I had to get into it straight into the next episode, because I had to see what was going to happen. And I could have spoiled myself. Like, I could have paused it and just read everything on Wikipedia about what happened with the Central Park jogger case, because it was based on a true story. But the show itself, if we were to just look at it as a show, as a miniseries, it's phenomenal to me. The portrayals, the direction, everything was great. So that captivated me in and of its own. Even though it was meant to, I guess, spark and raise awareness to those who, I guess, didn't know about it or didn't hear about it. Like you said, how this was kind of before our time. So a lot of people our age and even younger than us have no idea that this happened. So for people, part of the audience are people like us who didn't know about it and should should be knowing that such a thing actually happened. I think also this is something for especially white Americans who all weren't aware or just aren't aware of how tough it is for being a minority in America. This is almost worst case scenario, right? They had scenes where our current president, Donald Trump, was on television advocating for the death penalty. And after the show came out, in the present day, Donald Trump stands by. Same with Linda Fairstein. They both stand by that they confessed. The five of them confessed. So this all actually happened. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah, but that's okay. Um, so I have another question for you. So as you're watching the miniseries, did it remind you of anything in current times? Anything that any recent trials, any uh, hot topic news stories? Um, did any of that come to mind as you were watching?
Well, not necessarily while I was watching When They See Us, but I did go ahead and watch the Oprah special that's also on Netflix afterward, and I don't know if it was the Oprah interview or some other media coverage that was going over When They See Us that was touching upon how in this day and age, older stories that you don't get to see all the sides of are coming to light, and the comparisons that they were drawing it to were things like Surviving R. Kelly, the other show about O.J. Simpson, etc. Just things like that. But I didn't necessarily think of any of those other, I guess, scenarios while I was watching When They See Us, if that's what you were asking.
What do you think about how some of these films, in the way that they are portrayed, um, they can bend history, right?
Yes.
So they're these five gentlemen were exonerated because someone came forward and
Yeah.
confessed to the crimes that they were accused of.
So
But if that weren't the case, um, these films really have the power and the reach to bend the story as they see fit. Um, how do we know that the way these films are being portrayed is truly accurate?
we would have to look at the evidence of the real life case. And my understanding is Ava DuVernay tried to be as accurate as possible to the trial, which was episode 2. Like she tried to be as accurate as possible, and it was true. There was DNA found at the scene of the crime. None of it matched any of the kids that were on trial. None of it. There was one match, and it happened to be Matias Reyes, who confessed several years later, who had also, that same person, apparently, I think, and there was a scene in the fourth episode where apparently Matias Reyes went on to rape other women and was later arrested, but this person went on, like the actual person who committed the crime went on to continue raping other victims, and the police just let him walk because they were focusing on his innocent kids. So to answer your question, you would have to look at the facts of the case, and there are counter arguments being made, of course, to the show itself. So um, the victim herself, Trisha Ellen Mealy, she, as When They See Us portrayed, had no recollection of the assault or the rape, but to this day, she still questions the innocent of the Central Park Five, now known as the Exonerated Five. Now, she, I think she even said that the state should not have overturned what happened and not have like rewarded them the millions of dollars that the five of them got. And she also mentioned how there was unidentified DNA. So here's my counter argument to that. So there's Matias Reyes' DNA and perhaps some unidentified DNA. Even if she had another attacker, that unidentified DNA, even if that was from another attacker, still doesn't match any of the five people that were on trial. So why would you still think that they had any sort of involvement, you know? There was nothing linking them to it, whether it was, the DNA or not. Nothing was linking them to it. None of them knew each other. None of them knew where the rape occurred. None of this adds up. So, but
So
she's
one of the scenes that really stuck with me was one in where Linda Fairstein, the character, of course, um, in the miniseries, um, the detectives are in this room and they are looking at a map and they are pointing to their timeline and they're describing their timeline for when the kids were spotted by some cyclist and where the kids uh, were last seen harassing some people, and the they estimated the time that uh, that Miley where she would have been had she been jogging at full speed, and the locations and times would always exonerate those kids,
yeah,
and she continued to shape her story
yeah,
um,
yeah,
so that it so that they would be at the location of the crime.
yeah.
And these kids were also very unfamiliar with the location of the park or where anything was. And man, that
Yeah, this is
how can you be such an evil person to want to shape a story in order to falsely incarcerate
well,
people?
she was the correct me if I'm wrong, but she was the district attorney, right? She thought what she was doing was justice. She wanted justice for the rape that had happened. There was even a scene where she mentioned to I don't know to someone else how there were so many rapes that occurred in New York City and something needs to be done about it. So she wanted justice, but she went about it the completely wrong way. Now, I watched a YouTube video earlier today, a CNN video where some CNN anchor was interviewing an ex-policeman. I think his name is Eric Reynolds, and in that video, the guy said that he laughed at the entire portrayal, Linda Fairstein's of in When They See Us. Apparently, she wasn't there when the orders were being made to, I guess, round up teenagers that were on the list or whatever. Um, I don't. There are parts of it I don't really understand, though, to be honest with you,
So
because
such as what?
like, okay, there were there was another scene in the investigation. It was episode one, I believe. There was another person in the room with Linda Fairstein, and they were looking at that map. I think it was that same map that you were talking about just now. So
Okay.
they're going over times. At 9:05 this happened, and then at 9:15 this happened. Because there were other crimes that were committed. There was also a scene of people biking through Central Park and getting harassed there, and they
Okay.
later show up as witnesses at court, right?
Okay.
So so many different things are happening at Central Park. I haven't been to Central Park in a while, but it's a pretty big park, right? And part of it I think is close to Harlem, and that's the area that When They See Us focuses on. The other
Okay.
person in the room with Linda Fairstein says, "Okay, so when this happened and that happened and that happened, is there even like any time for all of this to happen?" And Linda goes,
Right.
"Well, it happened, so obviously there was." And although she's
Right.
literally not wrong when she says that, at the same time, yeah, all of it happened, but why are you still thinking that all of the same people were involved if all these things are happening in different places? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think what that scene does, it solidifies for the audience that she is set on getting a specific outcome despite contrary evidence.
Yeah. but that means, but if that's true, that means you're not doing your job right. You have
Right,
to.
right. That that whole um, nonsense about looking for justice, that is anything but justice.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The I don't remember the name of the actor, unfortunately, but the actor who portrayed Antoine McCrae's lawyer said that the justice system, that's the wrong name for it. That's what he says about it. Um, Another thing I want to talk about, just in terms of when they see us as a series, as a Netflix special. Michael K. Williams played Bobby McCrae, Antron McCrae's father. A really good actor. I think he was one of the most famous actors in this series because there were a lot of unknowns. I
Yeah.
think I don't know if I'm saying this gentleman's name right. Gerald Jerome, who played Corey Wise, phenomenal, yo. I think I honestly think I might have cried episode 4. My mom cried, and I think I cried too the first time I watched it. Phenomenal, phenomenal acting. Say what you will about the Emmys these days. I mean, they nominated Game of Thrones for a whole bunch of things, but Gerald Jerome definitely deserves some awards, some movie deals for what he did here. He was great in Moonlight as well, and he was phenomenal here as well. I really felt the embodiment of what he was doing in When They See Us. So um, just wanted to put that out there as well. Um, so
You almost cried.
yeah, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I almost cried. I mean, this hit pretty close to home. I mean, I'm not from New York City. I'm not from Harlem, but still, being a minority, being a brown person watching this still does hit close to home. I mean, like I was saying earlier, Trump. There were scenes with Trump on television talking about the death penalty, and they interviewed Trump again, or somebody asked Trump about it in the present day, and he said, "Yeah, they confessed." So this whatever. So okay, let's talk about what happened several years later. I think it was 2002 that Mateus Reyes stepped in and said that he and he alone committed this rape. First of
Okay.
all, and this is something that Yusuf Salam said in the Oprah special. First of all, the cops probably were just going to turn this into a sixth guy scenario, meaning there were 5 guys and this was a sixth guy.
Right.
And second of all,
Which is that YouTube video with Eric Reynolds. That's what he suggests
yeah,
actually happened.
there were several policemen were suggesting that. I mean, even on the Netflix special, there was, and When They See Us, there was another cop who was saying, yeah, this is the sixth guy, and he just wants some attention or whatever. So there's that, and I want to get back to that first point in a minute. So that's first of all, and second of all, each man was awarded $1 million for during the exoneration. They were awarded $1 million for every year spent in jail, and that adds up to about, I think it was 40 or $41 million. But they were exonerated in 2002, and they didn't receive reimbursement until 2014. Now, I don't know how the law
Wow.
or legalities. I don't know how any of that works. But how do you explain not getting paid for the state and your country doing you wrong in 12 years? How does that even happen?
What is the rationale behind that? Why didn't they receive their money?
I don't know. I mean, they did. They received it in 2014, but
Right, right. But what explains the holdup for 12 years?
I have no idea. I don't really understand it, to be honest. So, but that actually happened. So, and some people say 1 million is not enough because yes, these men, these young men who are now adults, they all suffered, but they're not the only ones that suffered. You also have to think about each of their families too. Their families definitely suffered too because they had to, I guess, pay the lawyers and stuff. They had to suffer with their family, their brothers that were stuck in jail for crimes they did not commit. And if the portrayal of Raymond Santana was accurate as well, he goes back to jail because he starts being a drug dealer for a little while. So that all happened as well. So now, going back to my what I was saying before about Matias Reyes, who eventually confessed to being the sole rapist in this case. The YouTube video I showed you with Eric Reynolds, which I also saw earlier today, he said something I never heard before, which was when Reyes and Corey Wise were in jail together, Corey was threatening Reyes to say he was the one and only rapist. That, like, I don't know. That just
but
sounds.
it doesn't add up in that Mateus's DNA was on the scene.
Yeah.
He was the only person whose DNA was on the scene.
Yes.
So, you know, even if he was coerced into confessing, it was his crime.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was his crime.
Yeah. His and no one else's. Yeah. So that's another thing I don't understand about. Again, this was before our time. I wasn't even born then. My parents had just come into the country, I think, in 1989. So Corey Wise, when they're all found guilty at court, Corey Wise, he was 16, so he goes straight to Rikers. And was 16 seen as being an adult back then? I thought it was always 18. I thought, like, in order to be considered a legal adult, you'd have to be 18 years old. Apparently,
I I think even now it's no, don't quote me on this. I think it's 16.
16.
I think that the movie portrayed that correctly. That where they draw the line for juvenile hall is 16.
Okay. Interesting. All right. So let me ask you something else. So
Yeah.
in terms of counter arguments, and this is something that you brought up about how do we know that the perspective we see and when they see us is the true and honest perspective. So Miley, the victim, who is still suspicious of the exonerated five, the Central Park Five, and doesn't think that they should have been awarded the millions of dollars that they did. How do you feel about her being skeptical about them being innocent?
I think she has every right to be skeptical in that she she doesn't recollect the assault. She doesn't recollect the rape. Um, and you know, she's a victim
Yes,
of
that's true.
this
Hmm.
horrible crime. And that she's lost a part of her, and she's lost a part of her mind that um, I think she will forever be a different person because of what happened to her. Um, and it's okay for her to be suspicious of the exonerated five. Um, I
She.
think that the truth prevailed,
Mhm.
um, and she, because she's a victim, um, it's okay that she thinks the way that she does. She's been forever scarred.
I think nowadays she's an activist for those who are victims of rape now. I think that's part of what she does now. So. And I understand what you're saying as well. And in fact, I think during the Breakfast Club interview, Ava DuVernay, when they were interviewing her, she was reaching out to several different people. She even reached out to Linda Fairstein. She was letting Linda Fairstein know that, hey, I'm making this series and you're going to be part of it. Do you want any input on it? And apparently, the real life Fairstein wanted to have like a lot of input on the script, and that's when Duvernay was like, "No, no, that's not what's going to happen." Fairstein was probably going to control the narrative a lot. Duvernay obviously was not going to let that happen. She also did mention that she reached out to Maylee, and she also didn't want to be a part of it. And Duvernay respected that. And of course, I understand why you would respect the fact that she is a victim, and that's where all this started, right? The reason all of this happened was because there was a rapist in Central Park. That's what happened, and the police let this person walk.
Yeah,
Until, of course, eventually.
this case would have gone by significantly faster. If you had a victim that could recollect, you could easily exonerate the young men say, no, no, those aren't the guys. That's not what happened. This is what happened.
Hmm.
Um, but unfortunately, that was not the case. Um,
There was also
and
a scene.
I'm still stuck on the fact that five young men who had every opportunity to succeed, to do something, anything with their lives, stuck behind bars
Yeah,
over something they didn't do. That's the part that kills me.
we
That's
even
really the part that bothers me.
we also saw, at least in Corey's episode, that they were offering him parole if he had, accepted the crimes that he committed, and he said no every single time. And I think the other four of them were also saying no to parole as well. And I think um, Corey or Raymond did say sometimes they feel like it should be 4+1, because for the fact that Corey went straight to Rikers while everybody else went to juvie, right? So,
Yeah,
and the show also wanted to place perspective on time. There was one scene where Corey was in another jail. He transfers many times. There was a scene where he was in one jail, and a police officer changed the channel to show him the 9/11 attack. So it was September 11th, and it shows you just how much time has passed. This happened in 1989, and then it's 2001. Corey is still in jail serving time for something he didn't commit. The Corey Wise episode was really something, man. The way he had to suffer so badly. I mean, we didn't really see much of what the other four went through, but I'm sure they had a tough time in jail as well. It's just that Corey went straight to Rikers. That scene where there was just a rat right there on his cot, on his bed. That police officer, that guard who kept saying, "Let me know if there's anything you could do for me." Like, what a snob! Like,
see,
what is
so
that? What
I
does that
think
even?
I mean I think it's pretty obvious what that means. That means although in Netflix it's portrayed as, you know, buying the guard candy bars. Come on, that's not at all what that means. And I'm surprised that Netflix chose to censor those scenes, but I think it's quite obvious that when uh, a corrections officer is standing outside your jail, um, thrusting his hips forward and asking or telling you to let him know if there's anything you can do for him. Um, it, it has a very sexual connotation, and um, I think that's what happened to him in jail. I think he was taken advantage of by his corrections officer. Um, and
Hmm.
I'm not sure if that was a miniseries director taking artistic licenses and extrapolating what happened to him in jail, but it's pretty sad and unfortunate that that's actually what happened to him while he was in jail.
There was, I mean, that one scene where Corey was trapped, I guess, in this part of the jail with two other inmates, and they ask him like, "Oh, where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from Harlem." And one of them says, "Oh, I heard Harlem's hoes, like our people from Harlem is hoes or something like that." And then he says, "I don't want any trouble. You don't have to hurt me." And they're like, "Yeah, we don't have to hurt you." But then they proceed to, like, I guess, beat the shit out of him for whatever reason. And this goes on probably for
Yeah,
years and years of years. So that scene really messed me up knowing, and that was like right at the beginning of the episode too, like in the first 20 minutes of the episode. Every episode I think was at least an hour long, so being that this is a mini series slash television series. But yeah, it's four episodes. If you For anybody watching the first episode, it's definitely worth completing the entire series. I think for a while, When They See Us was the most watched um, thing on Netflix for a little while. Now it's probably Stranger Things, but at the time, I think When They See Us really blew up. You know, um, I
why do you think this series caught on?
Well, first of all, it's very well made, and yeah, I think just as a series, it was very well made. And second of all, we're living in a time and age where things like stories like these are coming out again, like with other reality uh, not reality shows, but what I was mentioning before, Surviving R. Kelly, the O.J. Simpson television show starring Cuba Gooding Jr. These shows are getting a lot of traction, and people are listening. You know, people are actually listening and watching, and it's trending. You know, it's raising awareness. Man, I could go on talking about When They See Us for a while, but since we are nearing the end of today's episode, I just want to get into ratings. I have to say,
Uh,
man, this was a masterpiece to me. When They See Us was a masterpiece. I'm calling it collectively all four episodes. I'm going to give When They See Us a 10 out of 10.
wow. Yeah. So I'll agree with you. It ranks very high on my scale. Um, Definitely, I I can say that because it affected me to the point where I wasn't even sure I could finish the whole series. Um, that's how well put together the series is, and for that I'm gonna give it a 9, just a flat 9. Um, I not not within the realm of things that I typically like. Um, for that, the 9.
Yeah, that's fair. I
But
mean, it's masterful to me. It's a masterpiece. But yeah, 9, of course, is super duper high as well. So that's cool. Wow, man. So that was heavy. Yeah. So I definitely recommend everyone. I guess you'd probably have to be. This isn't really a show for kids. You know. I guess like
oh
it's
no,
yeah.
it's
It's
not
not
it's
for
not
kids.
PG-13. I'll tell you that.
Definitely not. Yeah. I guess it's rated R for television standard, anyways. But yeah, anybody who's suitable, like for suitable audiences, definitely recommend it to everyone.
I'm surprised you you saw this with your mom. There was just be aware there are a lot of rape scenes. Um, yeah, I'm surprised you saw this with your mom.
Well, I mean, she's into, I guess, the times and things that are going on. So once I watched it, I figured this is something she probably doesn't know about either, and I wanted to see how she would react to it. I didn't think she would want to watch all four episodes one night. I was telling her like, "Hey, it's four episodes. Every episode is over an hour long, so maybe we'll just watch, two tonight and two tomorrow night because that's what I did. That's what I was expecting. Maybe I was just expecting her to watch one episode, but she was so pissed off after the first episode and then the next one and the next one. We just ended up watching the whole thing, you know? And now she wants to show it to my dad. Like she says that my dad should see this too. I haven't had time to show it to him yet, but
What do you think your dad's reaction will be to the first episode?
honestly, man, I have no idea. I don't really watch a movie or TV with my dad to begin with, so I don't know what he's going to be thinking. So, but as much as I would love to continue talking about When They See Us, I do want to touch base a little bit on the next episode. So I
Yeah,
kind of miscalculated and messed up at the end of the Baby Driver episode. So
yeah, we lost track of what episode we
yeah,
were on.
I lost track of it. Yeah, this is entirely my bad. So
I take some blame for it.
fine, fine.
It's not a big deal.
All right, it's your choice to
I don't
take
take all the
blame.
blame.
Yeah,
It is partly your fault.
yeah, it's definitely my fault. So because it's my fault, I'm going to have to choose the next episode. I'm gonna go with one that's a little bit older this time. You may or may not have seen it already. For episode 10, I want to go with The Dark Knight Rises.
The dark. Okay. I mean, we can review that movie right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, we would have to end this episode first, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was 2012, so it was relatively old, but still kind of like a modern superhero movie,
That's.
I'd say.
I just want to make sure that's Heath Ledger Joker main story.
That was Dark Knight. This is The Dark Knight Rises with Tom Hardy as Bane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, part three.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah,
Oh,
that's
you got me excited. I thought it was. Yeah, I thought it was the Joker movie.
I mean,
I guess.
we'll obviously talk about The Dark Knight in that episode as well. But yeah, I want to focus on part three, which is The Dark Knight Rises.
Got it.
But
Okay,
yeah.
easy enough. So
So
we'll take care of that for the next episode. So that brings us to the end of another episode of the Unnamed Podcast. It's been real with Al Rogers and
Faerhad Targaryen.
out.
Peace. Take care.